Frank Mitchell, otherwise known as the Mad Axeman. A giant of a man said to have been able to pick up a grand piano single-handedly, or a grown person in each hand. Mitchell had a lengthy career of violence and larceny, spending more than half his life incarcerated in prisons or psychiatric hospitals, though nowhere could cage him for long. This is the story of how just before Christmas 1966, a manhunt for the escaped Mad Axeman, dubbed the most dangerous man in Britain, turned into a hunt for his killers. Frank Samuel Mitchell was born on the 13th of May 1929. He lived on Old Ford Road in Bow, the heart of London's East End, with his father Samuel, a fishmonger, his mother Mary, and his 6 brothers and sisters. As a youngster, Mitchell went to a special school for children with learning difficulties, but education always took second place to scrapping on the streets with the local gangs. As a man, despite the fact he reached 6 foot and 13.5 stone, he was said to have the mind of a child living in a man's body, possessed of a superhuman strength. Mitchell's involvement with the law started when he was just 8 years old. Having stolen a bicycle, instead of simply taking the bike back to its owner, his father Samuel decided to turn his son over to the police. Young Frank Mitchell was sent before a juvenile court and put on probation. Thus began Mitchell's slippery slope deep down into Britain's justice system. From probation to approved school, Borstal to prison. His crimes varied from shop breaking and larceny to holding stolen weapons. His formative years were spent inside various penal institutions, and during this time, Mitchell grew into a very big, strong man with a 54-inch chest and arms the size of most men's legs. Mitchell was a violent prisoner with a reputation for hurting prison officers, breaking ribs with bear hugs and maiming anyone who crossed his path. He was soon one of Britain's most infamous prisoners, catching the attention of none other than Ronnie and Reggie Kray. Joining the Kray firm became Mitchell's prison fantasy, and from meeting on the streets of East London to joint incarcerations in Wandsworth Prison, Ron, Reg and Frank kept in touch through prison visits and regular letter writing. Mitchell's experiences inside were grim to say the least. He was birched, flogged with a cat o' nine tails, put on bread and water, held in solitary confinement, and eventually certified insane, or mentally defective, as it was described in 1955. Frank Mitchell was transferred out of prison and sent to Rampton Hospital, a high-security psychiatric facility for the criminally insane, deemed a danger to themselves or others. Despite its locked wards and barred windows, on the 18th of January 1957, Mitchell would pull off the first of his many high-profile escapes from supposedly secure institutions. Using keys made from a bed spring, 27-year-old Mitchell and another prisoner escaped. On the run for 4 days, the pair broke into 4 houses and attempted to break into a 5th, stealing goods and money along the way. They violently injured one man with an iron bar before stealing a 12-bore shotgun and a motorcycle from a bungalow in western Nottinghamshire, whilst armed with hatchets. On the 21st of January, following a police struggle to disarm them, both men were captured in nearby Newark. Charged with wounding with intent to murder, multiple counts of breaking and entering, and theft, Mitchell was tried at Nottingham Assizes on the 4th of March 1957, refusing legal representation. Famously, Mitchell said to the judge, "There's not a lock I can't undo with keys, and if you send me back to any mental institution, Broadmoor or anywhere else, I promise you I shall escape. I am prepared to die." Frank Mitchell was convicted for his crimes and sentenced to 9 years, but instead of going back to Rampton Hospital, he was sent to Broadmoor. On the 8th of January 1958, using a key he'd made and a hacksaw to get through the double doors of his dormitory, Frank Mitchell escaped from Broadmoor. Now on the run, a little over 45 minutes later, he broke into the home of an elderly couple in Wokingham, 4 miles from Broadmoor, brandishing an axe and an agricultural cutting tool with a curved blade, known as a billhook. The homeowners reported that Mitchell stole a pair of trousers and a shirt, made them wash his feet, and even bring him a cup of tea. The couple's ordeal lasted just over 2 hours, after which Mitchell left in their car, a green Ford Prefect. Incredibly, Mitchell's disappearance from Broadmoor wasn't noticed by staff until 9:45 am, nearly 7 hours after he'd absconded. The press soon got wind of the terrifying house invasion carried out by escaped patient Frank Mitchell wielding an axe. He was therefore dubbed the Mad Axeman. Mitchell's face was beamed into homes across the nation, and the public were warned of the danger he posed. 2,000 officers with tracker dogs were hunting for him in the home counties, and police were told he might kill if cornered. The news reported Mitchell's physical characteristics. He was a man of abnormally strong physique, with 2 distinctive tattoos on each forearm. On the left a dagger, and on the right the words Mum, Dad, Joyce and the figure of a butterfly. A round-the-clock watch was ordered on Mitchell's family home in Bow, but Mitchell didn't return to London. In fact, his father only heard of his son's escape on the radio. 36 hours after leaving Broadmoor, Frank Mitchell was arrested on a coach bound for London from Bournemouth, and in October 1958, at Berkshire Assizes, he pleaded guilty to robbery with violence and was given a quite extraordinary sentence, life in prison. In 1962, the 33-year-old was sent to Dartmoor Prison, often described as the end of the line for British criminals and the toughest jail in the system. Mitchell was prisoner number 635, but it was in Dartmoor that Mitchell transformed. Shaking off his reputation for slashing screws and attacking other inmates, he became a model prisoner, never once ending up in the punishment cells. In Dartmoor, Mitchell found an outlet for his physical strength working on a quarry party, and in 1966, when senior staff reviewed his case, both the Deputy Governor and the Governor recommended that he should be given a date for release. Mitchell himself petitioned the Home Office for a release date countless times, without success. He wrote that he was choked at serving a life sentence even though he had not killed anybody, and complained of murderers being released ahead of him. Perhaps feeling pity for Mitchell, the Governor decided to reward him with the highest privilege a Dartmoor prisoner could earn, a place on the Honour Party, a group of just 6 out of 600 prisoners trusted to work alone on the moor, 12 miles outside the prison. This decision would prove to be a big mistake. In the lead up to Christmas 1966, visits from the Krays and other members of their firm, usually under false names, increased. Having served 8 years of a sentence with no end, Mitchell was feeling increasingly desperate. The Honour Party, which gave him a taste of freedom, was soon closing for winter, and the Governor who supported his demand for a release date was about to retire. Ronnie Kray promised he'd get him home. After Reggie Kray made a recce to Dartmoor Prison in disguise, the Krays decided that Mitchell could be freed quite easily. The plan was supposed to be simple: get him out of Dartmoor, take him to a safe house in London, and write to the Home Secretary and as many national newspapers as they could to demand a release date for Frank Mitchell. That release date would be granted, and Mitchell would take himself back to Dartmoor to serve out the rest of the sentence. But things didn't quite go to plan. On the 12th of December 1966, Frank Mitchell was outside the prison working with the Honour Party when he asked a prison officer if he could go and take bread to the horses. It was only later that afternoon, when the prisoners went to their pickup point, that Mitchell's absence became known. By this time, Mitchell was being driven by Kray associates to a safe house in Barking. Little did he know, this was not the road to freedom, but another prison, this time guarded by the Krays. Dartmoor soon raised the alarm that Mitchell had escaped again, and the press began calling him the most dangerous man in Britain. 300 police officers and even the Royal Marines were set off on foot to scour villages and the rough moorland surrounding the jail. Following Mitchell's escape, police discovered he'd been living a life like no other Dartmoor prisoner. The Krays had been hiding money for him on the moors and funding multiple trips to the local pub. He was even discovered to have on one occasion taken a taxi to nearby Oakhampton to buy himself a budgerigar, all while supposedly serving a life sentence inside Dartmoor Prison. Back at the safe house, things soon unravelled for the Krays and Frank Mitchell. Firstly, their plan was badly timed, as Roy Jenkins, the Home Secretary at the time, was talking tough on crime and how life should mean life. Secondly, no one had considered the real-life implications of trying to hold Mitchell in one place. He was, to put it mildly, a loose cannon. The Krays kept multiple minders on Mitchell at all times, as to let him go would potentially lead to themselves being implicated in the prison break and harbouring a dangerous criminal. As for Mitchell himself, he wanted to go and see his parents who lived nearby, and he wanted to go out at night wearing a mask. He was threatening to kill a dozen policemen rather than go back to prison. The Krays soon realised they had a ticking time bomb on their hands. On day 6 of freedom, the firm and Frank Mitchell were drafting letters to the press and the Home Secretary. The letter read, "Sir, my absence from Dartmoor was to bring to notice my unhappy plight. To be truthful, I'm asking for a possible date of release. From the age of 9, I have not been completely free. Sir, I ask you, where is the fairness of this?" But it was politically impossible for the government to negotiate with an escaped prisoner, and his pleas fell on deaf ears. The final straw came when Mitchell threatened to go and visit the Krays' mother Violet on Valence Road, saying he'd hold her personally responsible if anything happened to him. Having written to the Krays for so many years, he knew where she lived. On the night of the 23rd of December 1966, Mitchell was told he was going to the country to spend Christmas with Ronnie. He'd been upset that Ronnie hadn't visited him at all, and was cheered to be leaving the flat at last. Mitchell walked out of the flat flanked by two firm members, Connie Whitehead and Albert Donahue, Reggie Kray's right-hand man. They walked into a van parked around the corner on Ladysmith Avenue, and Mitchell climbed in the back. Unbeknownst to him, there were two armed men sat in the back. Witnesses reported hearing 4 or 5 loud bangs, like a gun being fired, but muffled because they came from the inside of a van. Albert Donahue is said to have been overheard making a phone call where he said, "The dog is dead." Every trace of Mitchell was removed from the flat, some items were burned, and others were said to have been taken and disposed of elsewhere. As for the police hunting for Mitchell, they found his clothes, a mask and a large knife stashed nearby to Dartmoor prison, but this was all that was ever found of Frank Mitchell. On the 4th of March 1969, the Kray twins were each sentenced to 30 years for the murders of Jack the Hat McVitie and George Cornell. Freddie Foreman was sentenced to 10 years for being an accessory after the fact in the McVitie murder. When the Krays then tried to make Donahue take sole responsibility for the murder of Frank Mitchell, Donahue turned Queen's evidence, implicating Ronnie, Reggie and Charlie Kray, as well as Freddie Foreman in the murder of Frank Mitchell. They all pleaded not guilty, and the judge agreed. There was no evidence and no body linking any of the firm to Frank Mitchell's murder, so just what did happen to his body? At least one account says that Frank Mitchell's body was taken down to the south coast, wrapped in chicken wire and dropped into the sea, while Ronnie Kray himself is understood to have claimed that Mitchell was actually taken out of the country, alive, to Spain or South America. We may never really know what happened to Frank Mitchell, but let me hear your theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching, please remember to give us a like and subscribe to the channel. I'm Nick from Underworld Uncut, we'll see you next time.